Hi everyone, I welcome you to our webinar. It's called Learning at Home, How to Help Your Child Learn in Your Home. Before we begin, there's a couple things I'd like to give you some tips about. I hope that you'll be present, and when I say that, I mean make sure that you're focusing and listening to this. I know it can be challenging when you have your children home with you, and sometimes it's hard to focus on things, but try to take 10 or 15 minutes to really listen to what's being shared during this presentation. One way to help you be present is to turn off or silence your cell phone, take notes, and feel free to ask questions. I encourage you to write them down, and you can email us at the email provided at both the beginning and end of the presentation if you have questions, and try to have fun. Hopefully you'll get some great ideas from this presentation. Introduction. My name is Lauren May, and I work at Step Up for Students as the manager of Catholic School Initiatives. Here you can see me teaching my two children a few years ago. That's when Maddie was about 2.5 and Logan was a newborn, and we were reading a book after dinner. I'm really big on teaching children at home. I think it's really important, and I love teaching my children, so hopefully you'll get some ideas from some of the things that I've been doing with them now. Madeline is 6.5. She's in first grade, and Logan is 4.5, and he is in pre-K 4. And here at the bottom of this slide, you can see our email address. It's parentpower@sufs.org. So if you have any questions during or after this presentation, feel free to email us and we will get back to you. The objectives of this presentation. Today, we are going to be working on a few different objectives. First of all, I will share some activities that you can do at home with your child. We're going to talk about why learning is important at home, how learning at home helps your child's school, and how you can help others have access to your child's school or the school of their choice. The big picture is children love to learn. They are constantly watching and listening to what we do, and they're always excited to learn something new. So hopefully this presentation will give you some ideas about ways to encourage learning in your home. Did you know? Why do we encourage children to play with puzzles? Many people aren't aware that puzzles are a building block for algebra. When children are putting puzzles together, they have to figure out which pieces fit. And if you think about when you're doing algebra, like a plus 2 equals 4, you have to figure out what number fits for a, which of course would be 2 because 2 plus 2 equals 4. When children are doing puzzles, you're helping their brain build so that they'll be able to do algebra. Why are schedules important? Schedules are important because children are very routine-based, and they do well when they have a routine. So I encourage you, while you're learning at home and while your children are home, set up a schedule. It doesn't have to be very, very strict, but if you say every morning we're going to wake up and get dressed and do our reading, then at least they'll know every morning they're going to wake up, get dressed, and do their reading. Or perhaps you want to start with math, or perhaps you want to start with going outside. You can choose how you want to schedule your day to work for your children and your family, but I encourage you to set up a schedule. And how does reading aloud help a child? Reading aloud is so important, and I hope that you'll take some time every day to read to your child, not only now while children are home, but every day. And what does reading aloud do? It builds knowledge. So books are a pleasure, but they're also informative, and they'll teach your children things that they may not already know. They teach your children to love reading. The research shows that when parents read aloud and demonstrate that reading is important, reading is more valued by the child. It's a great way to bond with your child. I know it's silly, but even my daughter, who's 6.5, will sit on my lap and listen to a book, and I encourage you to try that with your children. It builds literacy skills. You're going to teach your child vocabulary, phonics, familiarity of printed words, storytelling, comprehension. Reading aloud is so invaluable for literacy skills. And language. The number of words that a child knows when he or she enters kindergarten is the most important predictor of a child's success or failure. Reading aloud grows your child's vocabulary and introduces words and concepts that you might not use in everyday conversation. And it's also really good for brain development. So I encourage you to please take some time every day to read aloud with your child. So here are a couple tips of ways that you can do learning at home. Math facts. So every day you can just practice with your child either orally by talking to them, or you can make flashcards. So one of the great predictors of success in math is how quickly children can memorize or state math facts. So if you say 5 plus 3, your child should easily and quickly be able to say 8. 2 plus 2 is 4. And you can start this when they're very young. So my 4-year-old and I, we practice our math facts every day, but we only go up to 5. So we'll do 1 plus 1, 2 plus 2, 1 plus 3. And with my 6-and-a-half-year-old, my first grader, we're going up to 20. So I'll do 11 plus 7, 5 plus 6. And I try to trick her. And so I'll say, okay, I'm going to give you a hard one. What's 5 plus 8? Because that one's a little bit harder than 5 plus 5. So the more you do that, the better. And you can do that throughout the day. But you can also make flashcards and make sure that if you do, you schedule 10 minutes a day to practice the flashcards. With the alphabet, you can go around your house and think of and look at things and say, oh, here's a lamp. What letter does lamp start with? Lamp. And then your child should be able to say L. And then you can also practice spelling around the house and say, okay, we're going to have a spelling game. Who can spell lamp the fastest? Or who could spell their name the fastest? Or what letter does your name start with? So just think about little questions you can ask throughout your day to help their brains be turned on to thinking about spelling the alphabet or math facts. So now I'm going to share some resources, and hopefully these will be very helpful for you. I am a former kindergarten teacher. I also taught pre-K 4, and I was a principal for grades pre-K through 8th. So I have a lot of experience in teaching and using different resources to teach children. So one of the best math resources that I know of is called the Khan Academy. It's KAHN academy.com. Please visit that site. You will love it. They have so many great lessons that your children can watch and do on the computer. It teaches children how to figure things out that you may not remember from school. And then the other two websites, Brain Genie and ST Math, are really great. And the ST Math has a specific website for the coronavirus that has things you can do with your children at home. And because I used to be a teacher, I also like making up lessons that are doable in the home. And so my children and I did this lesson on the bottom yesterday, and I'll explain it to you, and I encourage you to try it at home. So you're going to find a non-standard unit of measurement, such as paper clips or Fruit Loops, and then ask your child to measure 5 things: a book, a brush, a spoon, a table, and a remote control. Then they're going to write down how many Fruit Loops they used for each of those things. So if they did a book, maybe it was 12 Fruit Loops, or a brush was 15. Then you're going to get out a ruler or a measuring tape and measure how many of the non-standard units are in 1 inch. So if you're using Fruit Loops, since I did this yesterday, it's probably going to be 2 or 3 of those will go into 1 inch, and then they're going to convert their measurements. And so for my 6-and-a-half-year-old, this is really doing division. So if you have an older child, they can just do the division problems. But if they're younger, they might have to count out their Fruit Loops and put them in rows and then say, okay, how many rows of 3s do we have? That's your answer. So there's a lot of fun ways to incorporate learning math at home, and that measurement activity is really fun. I encourage you to try it. Now, reading. So we're going to go over some reading resources. Some of the websites here are good that you can use, and they're all free. So the first one is Oxford Owl, and on that one there are books that you can read for free. And then scholastic.com has so many great resources for learning at home. I encourage you to visit there. It's scholastic.com, and just find the Learning at Home button, and you will be amazed at all the great things there. And then the Reading Rockets activities for reading and writing fun is another great one. So one thing that I encourage you to do at home for reading is find a fable or a fairy tale or a story that your child can read or that you can read to your child, and then have them illustrate a part of the story that they liked best and describe their favorite character. And if they're writing sentences, they should write out write out about what they drew. So if they drew a picture of Cinderella, then you're going to want to have them identify who they drew and why they drew her. What makes them like Cinderella the best and why. And after they finish that, you want to check their grammar and make sure that they use capital letters at the beginning of their sentences and periods at the end. And if they're older, then you're going to want to make sure they use descriptive adjectives and things like that. So make sure that you are doing as much as you can with your child. I'm sure you will. It's such a fun time to be teaching your children at home, and hopefully these reading lessons will be helpful for you. So now we're going to go to science. Science is so fun. So my favorite thing to do for science right now are virtual field trips. And you can Google free virtual field trips and you'll find tons of resources. But my favorite one is in this Google Doc, which we will link at the bottom of our YouTube video, and it's also available if you download this webinar. But it's a Google Doc that has all these different virtual field trips that you can go to for free. So you can take your child to a zoo, a farm, there's museums you can visit, and I encourage you to do that, and you could create little worksheets to go with your virtual visits. So you could create a scavenger hunt workshop. So if you're going to a museum, you'll want to say to your child, it depends on the age of your child, but you might say, find 3 things that start with the letter R, or you might say, find 3 Monet pictures. And then once you take your virtual field trip, then you could have them either research something they saw, do a writing project about something they saw, or they could do something else. You just can be creative with your ideas with the virtual field trips. There's a lot of great science lessons on YouTube, and so here I have a link for a good YouTube channel that has great science lessons. And then I encourage you again to go to the scholastic.com Learn at Home for free resources. So my children did scholastic.com yesterday, and we learned about spiders. So they have a whole unit with about 4 read alouds, and the computer reads the books to the kids. And then there are comprehension questions after that. And then what we did to make it more fun is we went outside and looked for spiders. And we actually found a spider that was creating her web, and we watched her, and we talked about what we learned from the scholastic.com lessons about spiders, and we put it into real life for them to watch. It was really amazing. And when I asked them at the end of the lesson what they learned, they said they learned that spiders really work hard to make their webs, and we shouldn't just tear them down because we don't like them. So I thought that was a pretty neat lesson for them to learn. So I encourage you to visit scholastic.com as well for great science lessons. And if you're looking for things to do at home, I encourage you to get some Legos out or some blocks. If you don't have Legos or blocks, get out cans, cereal boxes, any kind of snack boxes you have, and just tell your children to build. If you take a virtual field trip to a museum, have them build a museum using either blocks, Legos, or boxes and cans. All of that is so great for children to do, and it's really easy, and it could keep them busy for hours. So I encourage you to think outside of the box with science, and the best way to learn science is to go outside. So if you can think of times and things to do outside, I encourage you to do it. And one other great way to teach science at home is through cooking. So yesterday, my children and we cooked potatoes, and my 6-year-old and 4-year-old helped peel and cut the potatoes. Then we put them in the water and we watched them boil. So they were able to feel the potatoes before they cooked, which they're very hard. Then we cooked them and they turned soft. And then I gave them each a fork and they had to mash the potatoes. And it was really funny because my 4-year-old said, "This is too hard. I don't like this." And I said, "But imagine if you were trying to mash them before they cooked. Do you think we could do it?" And so we're teaching them about different types of ways that heat impacts things. And it was really a cool lesson, easy to do. I didn't do any research for it. All we did was cook the potatoes and mash them. And it was really a fun thing for them to do. So I encourage you to think outside of the box there as well. Another thing you can do outside of the box is take some water, put it into some different cups, and put a toy in there. It could be any kind of little toy. It could even be a Lego, and freeze it. And then bring the cups out and get the ice block out of the cups and see if your children can get their toy out. And that's a really fun way to talk about how what's the difference between a solid and a liquid. So there's some fun science resources. Hopefully those will help you and give you some ideas. I just want to encourage you, what materials could you use to help your child learn at home? So on the next slide, we're going to go over some materials that you can use at home with your child. Hopefully these will give you some ideas as well. Okay, so the first one, recipes. So think about how you could find some recipes at home and encourage your children to do them. And if you want to get really creative, try changing some of the ingredients and see what happens to the recipe. That's a fun one to do. You can also have your children write recipes. That is a really good writing activity to do at home. And they could do a how-to, so they could do how to make a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, and then you actually make it and see if their recipe included all the steps. That's a really fun one to do as well. Another thing from home that you can do is find some magazines. So in magazines, they can look for sight words, they can look for vocabulary words and circle them or cut them out, or they can even just look for alphabet letters. So if you want to focus on the letter R, have them find pictures or words that start with R and create a collage. That's a fun and easy thing to do. Balls. Think about what you can do with balls. One, you can do one-to-one correspondence, which is counting. So you can get a bunch of balls and have them count them. Then you could practice how many times they could throw them up in the air, how many times they can throw it back and forth and catch it. Those are all great counting activities that you can do with balls. And just be creative. Think of other things you could do with balls in your home. Fruit, vegetables, any kind of food, all of that is great for counting and sorting. So if you wanted to, what we did in my for our math lesson on Tuesday is we used Fruit Loops and we counted them, we sorted them by color, and then I asked my 6.5-year-old, how else could you sort Fruit Loops if you weren't just going to sort them by color? And she thought of the idea of sorting them by primary colors and other colors. So that's a really fun one that you can do. Any kind of food or anything that's different colors can be used for sorting or counting. This is a great slide that shares some other educational sites. So I encourage you, if you have time, to visit these sites. The first one is the one I've already mentioned several times, the Scholastic Learn at Home. I have used that one personally. I really recommend it, like I told you with the spider lesson that we did on Monday and then going outside. Starfall.com is great for young children. It teaches them how to read. Highlights.com has a lot of great science. ABC Mouse is good for reading for young children. So go visit some of these sites if you're looking for things to do on technology with your child. And then if you're not going outside, or if you live in a place where you can't go outside, I encourage you to visit GoNoodle.com. GoNoodle.com is so much fun. They have a bunch of different dancing lessons for children, exercise, and if you are really working at home and you're doing a lot of online learning from your child's school, take 10 minutes and go to GoNoodle every hour so that your child can have what we call a brain break. It allows them to get some of that energy out. And it's really important that you remember, children have to have breaks when they're learning. You can't expect them to go on the computer for 4 hours and not take a break. So if you set a timer for yourself and every hour you take 10 minutes for your child to either take a walk outside, do a GoNoodle dance, or do yoga, think of ways that you can really help your child be successful while learning at home. And if I could have one thing for you to remember, it is give them brain breaks. So thinking about how is this going to help your child's school? There's a lot of research that shows involved parents have more successful students. So be sure that you are working with your child while they're home. Don't just have them try to do it all on their own. Encourage them, give them positive feedback, and then, like I told you, give them brain breaks. That will really help them be more successful. Teachers love when their children are learning at home. And it's also enriching for you to help your child learn. I think that you'll find the more involved you are with your child's work, the more proud you'll be of what they're doing. And that will be really, really helpful for you and them. So we always like to talk to parents about how you can help other parents choose So what we encourage is if you are really happy with the choice that you have for your child, whether they're in a charter school, virtual school, private school, public district school, public magnet school, we encourage you to share that with others, and we want other families to be able to choose. So one thing that you can do if you're interested in this is you can join our network. So we are a parent advocacy group, and we get together with parents and we help encourage our lawmakers and others to support educational options. So if you're interested in that, you can text the letters FVFC, that stands for Florida Voices for Choices, FVFC, to the phone number 52886, and then you'll join our network. And there are other things you can do as well. So once you're back in school, you could host tours with political leaders. Also, if you think you're doing an awesome job at homeschool, you could take a video or invite a lawmaker to come into your home and show them what you're doing. And I think they'd be really impressed. But since we're all trying to practice social distancing right now, I encourage you to use technology and take some videos of what you're doing and email them to your lawmakers and show them the great things that are happening in your home. You can also call, write, and email your representatives. We have a social media pages, which I'm going to share on the next slide. You can respond to posts or share them on social media. And you can also do other things. So think of other ways that you could share your successes and share why you're happy with this school of your choice with others. And so these are our social media pages. I encourage you to like and share us on social media. On Instagram and Facebook, we're Florida Voices for Choices. And on Twitter, we're FLV4C, which stands for Florida Voices for Choices. So snap a screenshot of this and find us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. And I just want to thank you. Thank you all so much for being here today. I hope you enjoyed this. I hope it gives you some things that you can work with at home, work with your children at home. And if you have any questions or ideas, or if you want to share your stories, please email us at parentpower@soufs.org. If you have any questions or if you'd like to share your stories with us, we're always happy to hear them. Thanks again. I wish you well. I hope you have a wonderful day, and I hope that your learning at home is very successful.